right, Longevity Lab.
Oh, I was not into the
You're
mic.
not on.
I was screaming into the
Let's
void.
redo it.
No, I like that. Keep that scream in there. Welcome back, everybody, to the Longevity Lab. I'm your host, Juliet.
And I'm Mackie.
And I was a musical theater major, so I'm going to sing everything. Yes, I was a musical theater major, and that was short-lived because I realized that it was terrifying to audition for things like Broadway, and I was never going to be that person.
You found your performance in group fitness, though.
Yeah, for a long time, I just would scream on a bike.
There you go.
With blasting music. Today, we have an awesome guest who I listened to on Ali Shapiro's podcast. They had an amazing conversation about midlife and how we can set ourselves up. And I wanted to talk to Liz about this, who has been in this health and fitness world for 15 years. She has a lot of experience under her belt. As many of our listeners are over 35 in their 40s, 50s, and we want to think about how do we prepare ourselves?
Yeah.
And that's not something that our parents thought about necessarily, like the preparatory phase of, okay, I'm in my mid 30s. I'm actually want to do these things so that when I am 50, when I am 60, I'm really set up versus getting to those ages and being like, oh, I don't feel as great as I could.
Well, I think what's interesting is my dad was thinking about it. He just didn't, in that era, 90s, the information wasn't as readily available.
Yeah. But even your dad is a good example. And we talk about this on the show, so I won't get too into it, as someone who's 80 who's crushing it.
Yeah.
It's really awesome. But I'm going to read you Liz's bio, and then we're going to jump right into the episode. It was a bit of a longer one than we normally do, so I want to make sure that we get right to it. Liz Wolfe is a nutritional therapy practitioner and certified personal trainer who believes in an efficient, low-drama approach to wellness. She's the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller Eat the Yolks, host of the award-winning Balanced Bites podcast, founder of the Ideal Age brand of supplements and skincare, and creator of the Own Your Metabolism program and the Own Your Fitness app. And like we said, we're going to get into all things midlife. And I don't want anybody to be scared and think, I don't need to think about that yet. If you're in your 30s, 40s, this is an amazing episode to listen to.
Yeah, it's
just
good.
about how we can set ourselves up for the future. And we talk a lot about metabolism. There's food stuff. Not as much workout stuff, but we talk about that all the time, Mackie and I. But it's a great episode, and we're excited to have you guys listen. So without further ado, here's our episode with Liz Wolfe.
Enjoy.
So I would love to hear just about your background and how you got to be where you are today in helping people with their health and fitness.
Definitely. Well, I've said before, the story, not that the story changes every time I tell it, but just depending on who I'm talking to and what I'm thinking about, diving into in the moment, different parts of this journey sort of stand out to me more. But I'll give like the real, the bird's eye view of it is around like 2010, 2011, I moved to New Jersey with my fiance, now husband, and I was in like media. I was doing something completely different. I had always been like a professional question asker, like I was always really curious about health and wellness and stuff. I remember recommending soy to my friends because it was going to make their hair prettier and because of the really beneficial phytoestrogens, I thought that was so great. So I was always curious about that stuff. And by the way, I don't feel that way about soy now. It's just what I thought was the party, was what I thought I was supposed to be recommending at that point. I remember
I still think soy gets a bad rep. I think,
very contextual, right? And this
it's
is
all
why we have these conversations.
Context. Yes.
It's all about context. And it's like how old you are, where you are in life. There's just so many things that you can, when it comes to soy, when it comes to, grain, legumes, there's just so many conversations to be had, which is why we've been talking for 15 years, about this stuff, or why I have.
Yeah.
So around that time, I just kind of got thrust into talking about food and fitness more officially because my husband was military. I moved with him. I didn't have a job anymore. And I just started talking about what I was doing in my life. And with that, fell into CrossFit, got certified as a level 1 CrossFit coach.
Nice.
Ended up, that lasted however long the certification lasts, that's how long that lasted for me. So I never did renew that, but it was a really important part of my path, I think. And around that time, I also ended up discovering the paleo thing, going to school to become a nutritional therapy practitioner, which I still am today. And then much more recently, after years of really diving into the fitness world and learning as much as I could there and mentoring with one of the best coaches in Kansas City, if not the country, became a certified personal trainer. So, I mean, there were a lot of things between the beginning and the end there. But the uniform thing has been, I've been asking questions and questioning the status quo for a really, really long time and always applying it to my life. Nothing I ever talk about is something that I haven't tried, dived into, or utilized for myself.
I love that. Was it Gretchen Rubin, the questioner? She has
Love her.
the different archetypes because I relate to that too. Everything is, but why? But why? But
But why?
why?
Can you
Trying to get to the
do
root.
Gretchen Rubin types, by the way? Because I am a obliger, hardcore. So a lot of this was like what people were asking of me. And I'd
Mhm.
be like, I'll figure that out for you. I'm
Mm.
figuring it out too. So
Yeah.
that's what kept me coming back. But I've got a little questioner in me for sure.
Yeah, I think that's important. I really encourage more people to be questioning things, especially in this landscape that we're all in of health and fitness and social media and different media outlets, but mostly social media, I think is where people are getting their information from now. And that actually was our last podcast episode was how do you discern like who's for real? How do you figure out what to believe anymore? How do you know what to look for? Everybody's quoting a study these days. Just because they're saying studies show this doesn't necessarily mean that we all need to latch onto that thing and go do it.
Yeah. Oh,
So
totally.
it's tough.
It's really hard. One of the things I wrote about in my book, which I wrote in 2014, was deconstructing the China study, which was a really big one. And I didn't deconstruct it myself. I pulled together the work of multiple really people much more brilliant than I, with credit, who had deconstructed the China study and talked about, well, actually, it's not even a study. And actually, it was that. And it got really intimidating realizing that in order to cite a study, I would have to actually know exactly how that study was structured, exactly what the potential issues with it, the confounding factors, what type of study it was. Like you almost have to be a statistician to be able to
Yeah.
understand some of this stuff. And so that's when I think I ended up shifting to just being like, what makes sense? Like we've got to
Yeah.
redevelop our common sense at some point and listen to ourselves and our internal wisdom.
Definitely. And so I'd love to know more about what you're particularly passionate about currently when you're working with people. And, because I know it changes over the years and what you're passionate about now was not what you were passionate about 15 years ago when you were getting into CrossFit and the paleo. So where are you now as far as being a nutrition practitioner and helping people and a personal trainer?
I love this question. Where am I now? Well, now I'm 40. And so things are just different. I feel like when I first started out, I was really into healing my skin. And that was a big, not detour for me because I'm still passionate about that stuff. I wanted, to fix my acne and my eczema and all of that. And I feel like I did. And the good thing about that is it had resonance, that stuck with me over time. I've been able to hold that adjustment, if you will. But now, having turned 40, it was sort of a moment for me. And I think it is for a lot of people feeling like, oh, this is a thing. Like there is like a mental, emotional, and maybe even a physical moment around that point where you're like, what's the next 40 going to look like? I keep saying that your 30s are kind of part of your 20s, it feels like. And then it feels like the 40s is an entirely different era. And I don't mean that to be disempowering. I mean it to say it is midlife. Like it hits you, right? Like we really are looking at what's the rest of it going to look like and what are our values and how do we want to execute these next however many years? How do we want to go in to our next chapter? And so that hit me pretty strongly. And a lot of the stuff that I was seeing, a lot of talk about perimenopause and all of that type of stuff, it didn't exactly resonate with me. And I think the reason why is because I feel like women at the age that I am, and I don't know how old you are, Juliet. Are you 40 yet?
Yeah, so I'll be 36.
Okay.
Mackie's 42.
Okay.
So I looked to Mackie, even though he's not a female, but I looked at Mackie
He's female
for
attuned. He's
yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as far as fitness goes, this man is running circles around me in the mountains. And so I'm like, all right. But I'm preparing myself and trying to learn as much as I can through women who've gone through it. And I
Yeah.
think that I'm at a good age to kind of try and absorb and support myself as I get towards 40.
Yes. I think you're in an awesome, awesome spot. I was when I was 36, 37, 38, it was like pandemic. I was pregnant. So I was just on another planet during that point. But then after that, it really did hit me. But I feel like women in our 40s are being reduced to a very one-dimensional conversation. And it's like perimenopause. Like, we're not just perimenopause. This is not the only thing that is adding or taking away color and the various like dynamic aspects of our lives. I still feel like, or I still felt like, we're almost like flyover country, to use the term I used earlier about the Midwest and Kansas City where I live. We're just in so many ways forgotten. It's like we're raising kids, or we are building our relationships, or we're building our careers. And then there's all this conversation around menopause and, what happens in your 50s, which is really important. But I still felt like there was this kind of reductionist conversation around this era of life. It's like we don't know how to tackle it. We don't know how to talk about it. We still have some level of fitness from when we were younger, but we're also transitioning into this totally different phase. And that's not just perimenopause. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things. And I'm trying to figure out right now, what's the low-hanging fruit? What can we really look at that's going to make a difference that's greater than the sum of its parts, whether that's food, movement, stress relief, community, that type of stuff. And what's interesting is that it does kind of come back to the basics and being really brilliant at the basics. I've dabbled in like the biohacking stuff. I like to play with things like that. It's interesting to me. But it's coming back to those basics of what really creates a systemic calm, I think, that enables us to live really well for the next however many decades of our lives. We don't want to be stressed and overtaxed and spread too thin for the rest of our lives. We've got to figure that out. So I said a lot of things just there, but in general, trying to figure out how to bring this conversation into something bigger than just perimenopause or just midlife. But like, what is this actually about?
Yeah, as you were saying that, women are forgotten. That's something that several of my clients who are in their mid 40s have used that exact sentence with me. I just feel like we are forgotten, we are overlooked, we are invisible. I hear that a lot too. Like, I just feel like as we get past 40, we're now invisible. We're not looked at as being viable anymore. We're not looked at as being, on the market in some way, But it had me thinking a little bit. I'm just curious for you, Mackie, from a male perspective, do you feel like that, being in your 40s, like how does it land for you being in your 40s as a guy?
It's an interesting question. And I was thinking about that as well, as, from a male perspective. And I do think there is a level of this age group in general being forgotten a little bit, but perhaps a little bit less than from a female perspective, because you have your, especially in the world of fitness, you have a lot of things that cater towards the 20s and 30s, the high rocks, the CrossFit, the really high intensity stuff. And then you've got on the other end of the spectrum, the Peter Attias of the world talking about longevity, and that's like 50s, 60s. And then in this middle, this 40s, it's sort of the bridge stage that is talked about a little bit less.
And it's
like
almost the most important stage, right? Because like, I shouldn't say I've never been 50 before. I will someday. But if we're not taking this time to figure some shit out, it's going to be a lot harder. I talk about this in my metabolism program. I don't want to say that I can't speak to people who have reached menopause, but a lot of this stuff is a lot easier to sort out if you do it during that time. And instead, like, we just have so much going on. It's like the layering of stress and, relationships, careers, aging parents, which is a new thing. Like, I never saw my parents as people that I would need to take care of until the last, sorry, Mom, 5 some years. And so it's just thing on top of thing, kids getting older, more activities. And we forget ourselves. We really forget ourselves. And like you said, I think we're forgotten about in a lot of ways. But this is that time. This is that time of opportunity where we can enter that really next phases of our lives with a lot more ownership and a lot more health and a lot more information. I feel like we're not doing that yet.
Yeah, I love how you said this is the age of opportunity. I think if we all kind of band together and we like wore that and rocked that, like, hey, this decade is an awesome decade that we can be doing all of these things to prepare ourselves so that when we enter menopause, when we get to 60 years old, 70 years old, I mean, we look at, his dad is going to be 80 and he's getting like over 20,000 steps a day and he's just so active. He doesn't even have wrinkles, your dad. And I'm like, what is it? Like, what did he do? And then I'm thinking, it's what he kind of didn't do. Like, he didn't sit still. He didn't, he definitely cares about his nutrition and eating real food, like the basics that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And he has cared for many years. Like he's been prepping.
He hasn't always done everything right, but he's at least been paying attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it shows to be 80 and to be so active. What we would think of as an 80-year-old isn't what you picture your dad. It's like pretty awesome to see that it's possible.
It's possible. And there's something, I think you nailed it. There's something about turning 40 or being in that age bracket where you start to think about yourself at 80. And I don't know that I will have let myself think about that in my early 30s.
Oh, yesterday I had a day. Couldn't stop yesterday. It was an amazing day, and I think that was a part of it. But from the moment we woke up to the moment we went to bed, I just wanted the day to never end. And I was really present to the fact that I am not going to be this age forever. You're not going to be this age forever. In 30 years from now, oh my goodness, we're going to be this age if we get there.
Yeah.
And things will be different. And right now, we are so able-bodied and capable and all of these things. And it's like you just want to grasp it and cling to it in that moment. And I was like, I don't like this. Aging is scary. This is scary thinking about that we're going to be 80 one day and it won't look like today anymore.
Yes.
Because yesterday just felt like perfect,
Yes, I absolutely know. And it's that, oh man, the emotions of it are just wild. And I think maybe it's just characteristic of the age bracket that we're in, this additional introspection. I don't know, but you just realize, wow, these days are not that these days are numbered, but this is not forever. What we have is so brilliant and so amazing. And we understand that in a way that maybe we didn't before.
But I also think in our Western society, we don't have a ton of reverence for elders.
Yeah.
We don't grow up with this understanding that as we get older, we gain wisdom and we gain viability in different ways, and that we are an important aspect of society.
Yeah.
Versus being forgotten, like we've been talking about. Not to make this whole podcast super depressing, guys. I promise we're going to get into nitty-gritty things I want to ask Liz about metabolism. So don't worry if you're like, Jesus, I got to turn this off. I'm depressed.
We have to set it up first.
Yeah, but I do think that's a part of it. Just how we've all been socialized to think about aging is a big part of why we're maybe afraid or not as excited, because in other cultures, it's not looked at in that way.
Well, I think there's that we're so siloed in modern society. I am so fortunate and grateful to live right around the corner from my mom and my dad, and they play a really active role in our lives and my kids' lives. And that I read something fairly recently that said that I read a study, not sure what the confounding factors are of that study, but that grandparents who are active in their grandkids' lives live longer, happier lives, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think we're melding back together, right? We're melding that community aspect of raising kids, of aging back together, where I need my mom to help me. She needs my little kids to keep her young. And you see that it's that little microcosm of the community that we're missing in our modern culture.
Yeah, it's like a family unit. If you think about in the animal kingdom, right? Different families sticking together, a herd of elephants or whatever it may be. I think that I think humans are no different in that way, that we are supposed to be in tribe, in community. That's why things like CrossFit do so well and people become hyper obsessive about their specific communities. It's like because it makes you feel good and like you have activity and you're a part of something. And that's like a root chakra thing. Like we need that in our lives to feel grounded and whole.
Yeah, and we just had a nephew born 6 weeks ago, and this the first time my mom became a grandmother. With this new baby, I've seen something in her that I haven't seen since I was a kid or my brother was a kid, and it's so fulfilling to see that family circle come together. And my brother and his wife live like a 2-minute walk from my parents, so it's that same thing that you have where it's that easy connectivity. They can stop by. Oh, I have a problem with this. Can you help me out? Or can you watch the baby for an hour? So it's really great to have that.
It's amazing. I couldn't be more grateful for it. And it's taught me a lot about parenting. It really is. I think that's, we talk a lot about food and fitness and all of that stuff. And people still, we all have to fight this. Like people still think that's all it is. We talk about,
Right.
oh, you need to manage your stress, which by the way is like, I hate the conversation around stress management. We can talk about that later if you want to. But there's manage your stress, find community, get outside. But it's like people don't really believe they have to do that type of stuff.
Hmm.
They're like, but if I just work out and I stop eating carbs, like that, then I'll have what I want, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, there's a much bigger conversation around just like health and wholeness and stress management, like you're saying, that has nothing to do with the biohacky like optimization world
Yeah.
of health and fitness.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's a deeper, more kind of spiritual thing that is a much larger conversation. But to me, like the specific workouts and the specific diets are like just decoration on the cake in a way.
Right.
It's not the layers, it's not the foundation.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And that's not to, well, I'm sure we'll get into the stress stuff eventually, but I feel like
Well, we
that's
should just
almost,
jump into it now.
let's do it. Because I don't think I acknowledged this until recently, until I hit whatever this age bracket we're in, 35 plus. I don't know what to call it. I haven't been 40 for that long, but this 35 plus age bracket where you realize the stress milieu, like your overall stress bucket, like your cortisol impacts every other thing in your life. It impacts how you respond to workouts. It impacts what type of workouts you should be doing. It impacts the type of nutrition that maybe you want to focus on. Like our stress foundation, our stress environment, it's everything. And what sucks about that is that there are stressors that we can't just kick to the curb, that we can't just be like, well, okay, quit your job, cut out all of your toxic family members, make a ton more money, and then you'll be fine. It just doesn't work that way. And so I don't know, my thing lately, and I'm still working on the elevator pitch for it. I don't have it down, but my thing lately is when we program, or when we think about our nutrition, or we program our workouts, or think about our movement patterns or our movement menu, thinking about it in terms of how does that exist in relationship to our stress? Is it making it worse? Is it making it better? And that's not to say you shouldn't do something because it's going to add stress. I don't like that idea. I don't like the idea of don't work out if you're too stressed. We actually know there's some science that counters that idea. But to be able to address these things as the dynamic ecosystem that we are as humans, and not, again, like you were talking about, Juliet, like be in these silos, act like everything is separate, doesn't work.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think that this is very important. And I talk to clients about this a lot because, I make a program for somebody to follow and it's specific to their lifestyle and their needs, but those needs change.
Yeah.
And especially with parents who have, young kids, or they're also working a full-time job, and then they don't get a great night's sleep. And it's
Yep.
sort of like, do I choose to get the extra rest this morning, or do I wake up and go push myself in the gym? And oftentimes, I encourage get the extra rest. It's no, this one extra workout is not going to make or break life. And we also know that when it comes to changing body composition and weight loss, The workout is a very small aspect, and mostly it's going to be the other factors. It's the nutrition, it's the sleep, it's the
Yeah.
stress on your body, right? And that's not to say that we want to cut out all workouts, but I think this is a little bit more of and I don't even like using the whole intuitive, intuitive eating, intuitive this, because that
Yeah.
can like get kind of like blown out of proportion, because I do think you need to know yourself. And sometimes you might be making excuses. Sometimes you have to be. You can realize I am letting myself off easy
Mm-hmm.
and falling into that trap of like, oh, it's okay. I had a hard day. It's
Yeah.
sort of just have to know yourself and like begin to learn your own patterns and behaviors to understand when you should call it and when you should push it, you know?
Yes, I totally agree with that. And we do let ourselves off easy sometimes. And when you're trying to follow a guru or a protocol or a plan, not something individualized like what you or I would make for somebody that we were working with one-on-one, but when you're so stuck in this mindset of, I have to do this 30-day program from so and so, or I have to do this 6-week thing from so and so, and I'm guilty because I have 6-week programs. But when we are stuck in that mindset, we totally divorce ourselves from our internal wisdom, our intuition, where we can say, you know what, this morning I'm really tired, but I can do hard things. So I'm going to get up and I'm going to give myself that stimulus. I'm going to harness some of that cortisol response and I'm going to put it towards something, and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do the thing. Versus another day where you might be like, you know what, I actually really feel like rest is what I need right now. And we're unable to do that when we're constantly looking for outside counsel or validation. So I think maybe that's the thing that we need to be working on at 35 plus is connecting with what do I really, really need? What are all of these incredible bio-individual components to myself that are unlike anybody else? And how can I respond to those and engage those things and respond appropriately?
I think that is just extremely difficult for all of us, right? We
Yep.
just want to be we just want to be told what to do and know it's going to work. Like I say this probably every podcast, but people want certainty in some sense in some area of life. It's so hard to have certainty with the big questions, right? Like, who am I? What am I? Where am I going? What is life? Like those are like will always be
Yes.
uncertain, right? So where we can find these pockets of certainty often is like, how do I get the best workout? How am I going to build muscle the fastest? How am I going to lose these 10 pounds, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, good. GLP-1. I'm going to jump on that, or like, right? The certainty in some area is like kind
It's
of
survival.
important and comfort. We need
Yep.
levels of comfort in life. If everything is questionable, then life feels very chaotic and ungrounded.
Yeah. I'm listening to a book right now, and you all have probably heard of it before. It's Building a Story Brand.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
one of the things he talks about is the most important thing to any human being is anything that's survival oriented. So certainty is survival oriented. There's a reason that we resonate with that. Even if we don't know, even if we don't define it that way, there's a reason that we resonate with certainty. There is a reason we want to look good because that has to do with survival in some ways, like reproductive fitness, reproductive capacity. I've been thinking about all of these things. And I don't necessarily place great value on the all of those things in the same way other people do, but I do understand this concept of survival, reproduction, certainty, being fed,
Mhm.
watered, sheltered, and able to propagate. Like they're just basic things that are built into us. And we deal with that on a lot of levels, right? Modern world, primally programmed bodies. And there's a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, I think also synonymous with that is like control, whereas people feel like they have to have that. If they don't maybe define it as certainty, it's I like control in my life. I need to control these aspects, right? Of like how I'm living, how I'm eating, how I'm working, how I'm thinking. Because when things feel off kilter, it makes you feel disconnected from yourself in a way. Like, who am I? When this goes into a lot of like identity for people. And identity is huge when we And I think, as we're chatting about going in toward midlife, that's a big identity shift for many of us because when, you were 25 and you weren't thinking about being 80 and you were just like, I have so much time. I have lots of room to fuck up. I can push myself and do 100 box jumps and pull-ups and not have to worry about the next day. Like, gosh, that sounds hard right now. Like, one of our friends was saying they did that Murph workout at
Oh God.
CrossFit, and I remember doing that years ago and it being, like, was horribly hard, right? And I was like, "That does not appeal to me right now at this," and yet I do endurance sports, it's different, it's a different level of hard. But it's just, there's an identity thing that I think we have to really face in a lot of ways, and being malleable and maybe leaning into that the new identity could be so awesome instead of
Yeah.
fearing it.
Yeah. And that gives us the other thing that this book was talking about is meaning. Like we really do need meaning in our lives. And for some reason, I don't know, at this point, it feels more important than ever before. And maybe that's because when we get to a certain point, we realize the emptiness of deriving our meaning from something that's been dictated to us from
Hmm.
outside sources, that type of thing. And we're just more willing. And maybe we've eased into ourselves over the course of our 30s and we're ready for that conversation. And I think that potentially makes it easier to, in some ways, not in all, because we're also unwinding a lot of things, a lot of energies that we've taken on over the course of our lives. But when you're ready to construct something for yourself, it sticks. It really does stick at this point in life in a way that nothing ever stuck before, I think.
Yeah. I would love to get into the tactical things that you work with women in particular, I know, on when it comes to this shift that happens from working out a certain way or disregarding certain areas of health because we didn't have to really think about them. And something that's interesting to me that you talk about is the compounding stress that we put on ourselves in the 20s and the 30s, and then we get to maybe the 40s or beyond, and things kind of catch up to us. All of the things that we were doing, the dieting accidentally, even that you share.
Mm.
I love how you say accidental dieting. I think many people fall in that camp and don't realize they're doing it because they're not on a diet, but they are restrictive in different ways at different times of the day. On any given day, it could be a different kind of like restriction. Like, I'm not going to eat till 1 today. Tomorrow, I'm just going to not eat a lot of carbs. Next Monday, maybe I'll try eating all whole foods. Like, this is the kind of crazy that goes on in so many people's lives. And I mean that so lovingly because we all are prey to this because of all the information out there and just wanting to do the right stuff. So what have you seen with women where you can kind of guide them when they get to this point of, and if you could explain a little bit what you mean by like the compounding stress that occurs and then it hits
Yes.
you.
This was something that I didn't realize it was going to resonate as much as it did with people. I included this. I have a metabolism program, and I included this sort of walkthrough of my journey and what I had seen in other people. And it really hit with people, which I thought was interesting. And I talked about, we'll talk about the compounding stressors just of food and dieting, walking through the last, 20 years of my life, 25 years of my life. It's like, I discovered Weight Watchers. And so you try and do that a little bit. And then you go from Weight Watchers to maybe then you discover like Atkins and you find out, oh, carbs are bad, right? And then you do that for a while. And that kind of works because things tend to work, quote unquote, work for a while. Anything that's kind of not really founded in balance will work for a while and then it stops working. So, right, you're like Weight Watchers and then you're Atkins and then you go to college and you dabble in veganism or like what I did, which was like sleeping a lot and drinking vegetable broth and trying to lose weight. And then, but also like pizza after midnight doesn't count, beer after a certain time of day or on Saturdays doesn't count, that type of thing. And then after that, you find paleo and CrossFit and you're like, this is it. I figured out I can be healthy. I can do really hard, really awesome things. And then, maybe you do really hard, really awesome things, too many box jumps, 100 in a row, and then you're injured and then you're out for a while and then you fall off the wagon. And anyway, you weren't eating carbs. And so you start eating only carbs. And then after you find paleo, you find out about intermittent fasting. And then you're entering a stage of life where things seem harder and harder to maintain, where it's like, man, I have to do the next extreme thing to whatever, lose weight, change my body composition, be happy with where I'm at. So it's like, and this is the progression of the last like 5 to 10 years that I've noticed is like low carb paleo to intermittent fasting, sometimes like one meal a day. And then we're talking about carnivore. And then we're talking about the next thing where you're restricting one more thing and one more thing. And those are just stressors that you're layering on from a dietary perspective. Like
I
you're
think a mental
restricting
perspective too,
Yes.
like big time. If
Yes.
not just dietary, I think even more just from my personal experience of the intrusive thoughts and brain space that it takes up to try and stick to something like this or think about food all
Yeah.
day or something like that because you're trying to do this thing.
Just making those calculations is exhausting. And I think that's
Yeah.
why people get so far into the fasting, intermittent fasting, one meal a day stuff is because you actually don't have to do any calculations. You just don't eat for as long as possible. And then you just get in all of your calories in one hit. I get it. I get that.
Yeah.
And even
For
that
sure.
leads to more and more extreme measures where, we know people that do like 3 days of fasting,
Yep.
and then, it just
Yep.
turns into more and more. More is better is our societal thing, right?
Totally. And then we get to the end of this road where we're like, I literally can't take out anything else. And then we blame ourselves.
Mm.
Or we blame now I'm too old or now I'm, in perimenopause, so I can't lose weight or I can't, and I use that term kind of loosely because I'm not a big promoter of losing weight, for I want people to be healthy. I want them to feel really good and I want them to feel at home in their bodies. That's really all I care about. That means different things to different people. So just for people that don't know me, understand that I'm not, this big proponent of I'll help you lose weight at all costs. Not
Yeah,
that
but
at all.
something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, we are so influenced by the pulse of the culture where it is right now, where it is headed, where I see it headed, where this is just from my observation, is we are going towards thinner is better. Let's get skinny, skinny. And that's happening a lot because of the weight loss drugs that are on the market and influential people taking these drugs who don't really need to lose that much weight and
Yeah.
just getting very thin. And I'm seeing it in my circles of women that I've worked with, and it's really infiltrating their circles, like the
Mm.
40s, like I don't even know what to call it. I don't know what's going on there, but it's happening week after week. Another person I know going on a weight loss drug. I want to lose
Well,
10 pounds. I don't want it to be hard anymore. I want something easy. And that's so,
yeah.
and like, I understand that. Like, it feels hard when you've been trying to lose even those 10 pounds that even when someone tells you, you don't have any weight to lose, but you're not at home in your body, you want
Yeah.
to lose that weight. So I empathize and understand, like, you just want something easy. You want a win, right? Everything's hard. Having kids
And it
is tough.
is.
Like it is. And I empathize with
Yeah.
that. So, but as far as I just think that we are entering a little bit towards that right now. That thinness is what people really want. I mean, is that any different than how it's ever been? I don't know. I think it's been masked in different ways.
Yes, I think it's been masked. I think that in the end, this is not a fully formed thought, so I don't know if I should say it, but I'm kind of halfway there, so I should probably say it anyway. I was thinking about this today in the context of what we were talking about before, which is these deep survival instincts that we have. There is a powerful, profound, subconscious interplay between survival and wanting to feel attractive. Now,
Yes.
obviously, our social constructs around attractiveness are bullshit, and they have been completely co-opted by for-profit enterprises that want to profit off of our insecurities. So we're fighting that battle, right? But somehow, underneath it all, there still seems to be that drive for, I need to be smaller. So it is very interesting. And I will say, Allie, I was on Allie's podcast. I have used peptide therapy to make it easy to lose some weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I can talk about that. I'm happy to talk about that because that journey was very interesting. And it was both an interplay of where I was in my overall journey, fully self-accepting, experimental, which is just the way I always have been. I've tried multiple different peptides for multiple different things, muscle, longevity, libido. Like I've tried everything. I just think it's kind of fun. But I also entered into that going, this is an interesting experiment. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I am not attached to the outcome in any way, shape, or form. And I think a lot of people are not there. They go into any journey, whether it's trying to change their body through improved fitness and nutrition or trying to change their body by pressing the easy button and using these peptides. They go into that journey so attached to the outcome and so prepared to judge themselves and just crush themselves with shame and guilt if it doesn't work out. In some ways, I'm sort of a proponent of the easy button just because of all of those things that we've talked about. And this is not meant to lay blame on us women, but what we have done to our bodies over the course of decades makes it damn near impossible to reach any kind of goal because our bodies are like, no, I'm not safe. If you're going to take away any amount of food, if you're going to press me in any way, I'm going to respond with a stress response through the roof, and it's not going to work. So it's so complex. There's so much nuance there, and it's hard to weed through it.
Let's talk about that, what you just said. I want to go into that because this is a constant conversation that I'm having with Mackie and myself. Like this is something I think about all the time as far as we just had a big podcast on the calories in, calories out conversation. So many nuances to this in a sense.
Yeah.
You have, PhD nutritional scientists out there who are really, they hammer it like, no, it really still is a calorie conversation. You are lying. You are not logging your food properly. Like if you are really eating 1,200 calories a day, like you are saying, then there's no way that you are not going to be losing weight. I think it's both. I do think that people log improperly. I see it because I've worked with clients where it's like, oh, now they log properly. They finally get in a deficit and they do lose weight. But then I also see the woman who has run herself ragged, has done yo-yo dieting, has exhausted herself, is in technically a deficit or survival calories, barely, and cannot lose weight or is gaining weight. So I just want to hear from your perspective what you see there because women feel gaslit around this. And I don't want to make people feel gaslit as a practitioner where both things exist, where sometimes you really are needing to be in the calorie deficit and you are not calculating your food properly, and those little snacks and things you're eating, like they count, So let's talk about that. Because this is on my mind constantly.
I think about this a lot too. I saw an Instagram, I don't know, I'm old now, so I don't know, a stitch, like somebody stitched something together, literally ridiculing people. There's this, I don't know, this trend in social media where people are like, you're actually not losing weight because you're not eating enough. And I actually totally see how that can happen. I understand where people are eating so little, where they're barely like hitting their BMR, what the basic number of calories it takes to stay alive, basic bodily functions at rest when you're not even out of bed. People are eating so little that the body it adjusts your metabolic output so that you are burning, whatever word you want to use, burning fewer calories. Your body will ask you or force you to do less. Your body will create a system of adjustments that makes you move less and will drive up your appetite so that you'll eat more. So there's so much complexity to how you even achieve, if that's the word you want to use, achieve a deficit. That said, yes, in order to lose weight, you do have to be in a deficit. That's just kind of how it works, but it's how you achieve that deficit and what your metabolism is doing, what your metabolic rate is.
How do you figure that out? That's the question, right? Like each person has a different scenario going on. And, I use myself as an example lately of I'm running a 100-mile race coming up.
Yeah.
So I am in a crazy deficit, but I'm actually gaining weight because my body is in this survival
Right.
place of we need to store, I'm finding, and I'm probably am eating more than I'm actually burning because my body's burning less than even I think it is, because it's adjusting
Yeah.
to
Which is
survive
amazing.
what's happened.
Yeah.
And
That's
yeah,
how cool is that though, that your body is like, I got you. Like,
yeah,
I know what to do in this
yeah,
situation. And this is another reason why something, whatever you try, will work once and then it stops working. It's because when your body is faced with a new stimulus, in particular, like the first time you go on a diet, hopefully this is on YouTube somewhere because I'm
yeah,
using air
Yeah.
quotes all the time.
yeah.
The first time you go on a diet, your body's like, I've got reserves. I'm going to recruit them. We're going to use these up. That's what these reserves are for. That's what this adipose tissue is for. I can pull from that. I can cannibalize your muscles. Hopefully that's not what's happening, but I can do that and I can give you the energy you need to survive. But next time this happens, I'm going to be ready and I'm going to make sure that we have plenty packed away and I'm going to make sure I am ready to not let this happen. Your body is so wise. It has a memory
Yeah.
in that way. And this is also why it's difficult to calculate these things because you
Mhm.
have to look really honestly at your entire dieting past, at your fitness past, at your history of movement and figure out. This is one tool that I really like, though, by the way. Before I went on my intentional weight loss journey, I went and I had my resting metabolic rate assessed. There are online calculators. You can punch in your daily activity level, and they're good. They're fairly accurate. Maybe you have opinions on those as well. But I actually went, I got a DEXA scan, I got my VO2 max, I got my RMR breath test. I did all of those things because I wanted a really individualized calculation based on my body. And I
Mhm.
tracked those things over time. So go get your RMR assessed. It's pretty cheap generally.
Yeah.
And then don't go below that. Don't put yourself in such a deficit that your body is downregulating every vital function that you want it to be harnessing in order to lose weight. Don't do that. Don't tell
Yeah, I
your body
find
that
that
it's not.
the online calculations are very average, and it's
Yeah.
really mostly for someone who does not have a lot of muscle in their body or who is not very active. You're probably much higher if you are an active person or have a good amount of muscle in your body.
Mhm.
So, like for me, if I were to put in the calculation, it would tell me that my RMR is 1,300.
Yep.
And when I had it done, it was 1,800. And
Yes.
that was a long
Mine was,
time ago,
yeah,
actually,
mine too.
before I built this much muscle. So
Yep.
I kind of have a feeling if I went, I'm going to do it soon, that I'm over 2,000 a day, just
Probably.
based on how much muscle activity I've done in the years following that 1,800 reading. Or it could be down. I don't know, because I've done so much. But these are so many things but I was just thinking about that it's time, because especially with being more specific with my training right now, I want to make
Yep.
sure I'm getting enough for recovering my body. And I
Yeah.
follow Stacy Sims a lot because, she's like endurance queen. And, I think I ran a calculation the other day that said that I should be having a minimum of 3,500 calories a day right now. And I was
That's
like,
hard. That's hard to
holy
do.
shit, that's a lot. It's hard. That's
Yeah.
not, people might think that's so awesome. You try. It's
Yeah.
not that awesome,
No.
especially if you,
Especially every day.
yeah, every day. That's really fun on a Friday or Saturday, having a pizza. But that's actually quite hard on like an everyday basis without feeling like so full. And
Yes.
if you're eating like vegetables and rice and like foods that are filling foods, I could definitely do that if I ate a hamburger every day for lunch or something. But that's not like what I want to be doing.
Doing that on real food is just that much harder.
Yeah, but just goes to show you that a lot, less is not more. And I think you found working with women that they're so underfueled, especially those who are going to the gym and like they're doing all these workouts.
Yes. And there's more to it than that. Also, it's like not only does your body not have the fuel it needs to complete what you're asking it to do in that moment, it's also your overall stress response. And that's prolonged. That's something that matters maybe even more than just being underfueled for one workout. It's this stress that you're layering on top of stress, and your body is making these adjustments every single day. And it's the concept that I discuss this with is the concept of safety. Is what signals are we sending to our body, and are those signals sending signs of safety. So everything we do, every choice we make, we are sending signals back and forth with our bodies. Our body doesn't understand words, it understands signals. So the signals are, what kind of exercise are we demanding? What type of fuel are we giving ourselves? And one of the things I land on, and I would actually love to hear your thoughts on this and how this unfolds in your business and with your clients, one of the signals that I think is profoundly effective in signaling safety is carbohydrate intake. And we just don't eat enough carbs. Carbs tamp down the cortisol response. They provide immediate fuel for the body, so the body doesn't have to go break down muscle or break down adipose tissue, which is metabolically more costly to have to do than just to recruit fuel from glucose. So you may or may not disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on
No,
that.
I am in agreement with you. And, I was definitely carbophobic in my in my 20s.
Yeah.
And just from all the messaging. And before I really learned how important and powerful carbohydrates are as an athlete.
Yeah.
So, us athletes know that like carbs are life in a way. And I had to kind of rearrange all of my brainwashing around this to
Yeah.
give myself the best chance I could at getting better at my sport, and realize that I took away from my training for many, many years. Kind of when I think about how I was in a deficit and how I really could have had so much more success and adaptation in my training. And I'm like, when I look back and think, gosh, no wonder I was plateaued for so long and had no increase in strength, no increase in endurance, all the things that I was like, shouldn't that be happening over these years? But I kind of built to a place and it just stuck there until I started fueling and eating many more carbohydrates to then see, wow, I was getting stronger, faster, and I could go longer. All three were happening. They're happening even now as I'm increasing. I mean, a perfect example of this, I had a huge training weekend this past weekend, and my goal was to see how many carbs I could get in. Like it was like an eating contest, basically. And what was so profound about that is how fucking badass my body felt at the end of the 19 miles of training going up. I do mountain climbing. So we did like 6,000 feet of vert. I had so many carbs in my system that I normally have and calories. It wasn't like, how long can I go without eating, which would have been kind of like an old mentality of, I want to try and like lose a little bit of weight or lean out, right? It was like, we're going to see how much we can put in to make this feel the best it could possibly feel. And I felt strong at the end of it. We went out, we had a huge dinner that night. I had energy to go out that night, whereas before I probably would have been on the couch, like taking a nap. The next day I could train again.
We ate a lot, but it wasn't like we were going into it famished. And I think that's a good indicator. If you finish your training day and you feel like, oh my gosh, I need to eat everything under the sun, then I mean, it's a good indicator that you didn't have enough during.
But I just illustrate this as, if you are someone that likes to train, you like to work out hard, like that's something that's a part of your life, whether you're training for something or you just do it as a hobby. You train hard, you need to eat hard. You just do. You have to. And you will reap the benefits and the rewards and the adaptations of your training, and you will feel so strong and you will sleep better. This is something too that I didn't connect for a long time, but I'm now hitting the pillow and falling asleep. Whereas before I used to have a hard time falling asleep. The carbohydrates really help regulate my sleep.
Yeah.
So just direct relationship to that I felt personally as someone who used to eat like no carbs, like just, a piece of Ezekiel bread would be like, that would be like the carb in the meal.
Yes.
So, and it's still, I'm not going to lie, there's so much messaging around this that even I still catch myself being like, is that too many carbs? Because it's just, for years when you have heard messaging and you have done something, you have to rewire those neural pathways that are telling you that something is bad. Even when you're like, wait, but this is literally what all the pros do. And I'm not some special person. Like, I'm just a human being like everybody else. And I'm not a pro. If I want to be anywhere near that level of, pro athlete, I should be looking to them to see what they're doing.
And this is where Okay. And this is where people limit themselves a little bit. People are like, well, I'm not an athlete. I'm not like a hard charging athlete. So I shouldn't eat carbs, right? I'm like, no, actually, you should. Those people should be eating an ungodly amount of carbs. You should be eating at least, I mean, I don't like giving percentages, but I find people do really well on a 30, 40, 30-ish, 20, 50, 30-ish protein, carbs to fat. Just in general. It doesn't mean everybody has to stick to that, but I feel like
Yeah, and that would be
tends to be
40% carbs. This is what I recommend a lot. 40, 30, 30.
Yep.
40 carbs, 30 protein, 30 fat. Very
Yes, that's
balanced.
exactly what I recommend. Yep.
Psychologically, too, we're talking about stress. There's a psychological component to this where you feel so stressed when you can't have these foods. When you
Yes.
incorporate these foods into your everyday life, you know, you have a cookie after lunch if that's what you want to have. You will then you can keep those cookies in your house. I know you don't think you can. I know you think that you have some special circumstance that will never allow you to have cookies in your house. I can tell you with certainty from someone who had binge eating and I went through all of this. There are cookies in our house downstairs, and I had half of one after lunch today, and that is all. It satisfied my craving. I didn't feel compulsion. I
Yep.
don't think about them down there. They're just down there.
Isn't that wild?
It's profound.
Yeah, it is. I do the same thing. I've got I at some point in this journey, and this was 5+ years before I ever even thought about any kind of intentional weight loss journey. I was allowing myself to have whatever the fuck I wanted. Like, what is this? We are human beings. Let's stop being like, I shouldn't have that, because that makes it worse.
It does, yeah.
I think we need to acknowledge the fact that we are surrounded by stimuli that play on our primal subconscious instincts. We can't reason our way out of it. We have companies with millions of dollars worth of marketing budgets that are designing products to appeal to our primal instincts to survive. Easily digestible, easily accessible, colorful, all of that stuff. Salt, fat, everything. So we are up against it. We ask a lot of our brains. We ask ourselves to resist a lot of things. And many of those things we should resist. Like, fuck you, Kellogg's. Sorry, now I'm going way overboard because you told me I could cuss, but there are so many companies out there that are exploiting us and our children with these hyper palatable garbage foods.
Let's go to Kellogg's for a second. Let's get the conspiratory hats on. Tinfoil hats
It's
are
not
coming
even
on.
a conspiracy.
No, it's not at all, actually.
No, it was
and I want to be
very
conscious.
direct, yeah.
I want to be conscious of your time. So if you do have a hard stop, let us know. I
Yeah,
just
but
have
let me
I just have a hard stop at 3:30 our time. That's it.
What time is it your time right now? 2:30?
2:52. We've gone an hour. So I just want to be conscious because I have a couple questions.
I know I talk a lot.
You're
I'm good for
good.
like another 20, 30 minutes.
Perfect. That's
30?
exactly
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah, we should be good.
I didn't know that Kellogg's was created because they thought that grains would make people not masturbate or be sexually deviant.
Fornicate. I wrote about this in my book, actually, like 10+ years ago. I wrote about John Harvey Kellogg and how he was like this absolute megalomaniac who thought everything he said needed to be heard by the world. And I can't remember the entire story about it, but I went deep into his like not autobiography, but his biography. And yes, found out that a lot of these grain products, and he was also big into soy as well. So a lot of it was to suppress like the carnal urges, like a lot of these things that make us who we are, that make us human.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that there's some conspiracy of that grains are bad. I don't want people to think that in a sense. But yeah, the highly palatable foods, it's like kind of obvious that these are not foods for consumption.
Right.
These are products.
Byproducts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I would love to go into a little bit about kind of supporting women or men too, because I think this happens to both. This low energy availability that can occur when we have dieted for a really long time and the calorie deficit's not even working. Like, where do we go from there if we do want to help get our body out of that survival stress state?
Yeah, that's such a good question because I can answer that question. I can answer it easily. But it is what you have to walk through to get to that place of healing that some people aren't willing to do. Because for some people, it requires a shift in body composition, often temporary, but for some people, it does involve putting on some weight. For some people, it involves doing things that they're really, really uncomfortable with. So I can solve that problem, but it depends on what you're willing to walk through.
Yeah, I think that that's really important to talk about. My coach talked about this with me. He said, you are probably going to put on some weight. I hope you're comfortable with that. It's temporary. Your body will then adjust to all the training and it will go to a place where, you're optimized. But
Yep.
he warned me of this when I first started working with him with my training. And I thought that was very helpful, actually, because then I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting into with
Yeah.
going into this 3,500 calories a day or whatever. I know where I'm getting. My body is going to be like, holy shit. We just went from deficit most of the times to kind of hold a certain body composition when I was more strength training to now you need all this to do what you're doing now, right?
Yes.
So I think that that is important as a practitioner to talk very candidly with people around that instead of skirting around and being like, oh no, that won't happen. Don't worry, like protecting the client. I think that too
Yeah.
many practitioners do that because you feel responsible maybe for the person and that they have to be getting exactly what they want. But actually,
Yes.
we're here to give you what you need, not
And
always
that's
what you want.
I'm so bad at that. I'm so bad because I want everybody to get exactly what they want. And I
Yeah.
want to be able to negotiate that for them and figure that out for them. Like, how can I make you the exception to the rule? But I've realized, finally, I've been a nutritional therapy practitioner for like 15 years. I have finally realized that there are certain laws of the universe that I cannot help people exempt themselves from. I just can't. And I want them to stop trying because in the end, another failed attempt to try and overwhelm and circumvent the laws of the universe, it's going to stretch out your journey even longer than if you just accept what needs to be done, get through it, and then start your journey on the other side.
So what needs to be done and how and what do they need to get through? And I know that everybody's different, but maybe we kind of archetype someone just to give an example.
Yeah. Baseline. And by the way, when you talk about your training, I think it's so amazing because it's just this another way that our bodies are here to serve us. And your body's like, I know that you are asking something of me. Not sure when the end of this is, so I'm gonna pack it away. I'm gonna make sure you've got plenty of reserves to do what you need to do. I think that's
Well,
amazing.
when you see a lot of athletes in the endurance sport world, so many are malnourished. And there's so much injury that occurs in this sport, in marathons and ultra marathoning. And that is because they're underfueled.
Yeah.
And that is because being, lighter is faster. It equates to that, but that's not actually true all the time. Not that I'm trying to like defy the law of physics here, but if you are injured, how can you perform, right? So if you're at a weight that is getting you prone to stress fractures or you are not getting a period anymore, which happens to so many women who ask too much of themselves and are undernourished, then you can't perform. So it's like, how do I actually get to the start line healthy and feeling good? And that might require my body to gain body fat to protect my reproductive system to make sure that I am in a healthy spot to do 100 miles in the woods.
On that note, I also think that a lot of this carbohydrate restriction, I'm all about the protein. I think the narrative right now around protein is very productive. We're getting people to eat more protein.
I agree.
But how do you make your protein work for you? You got to eat carbs too. You have to do both.
That's
of
never
those
talked
things.
about, that you have to do the protein and the carbs. It's not just having
What?
protein. It's not being the, carnivore diet.
Yes.
It's both.
Well, and there's a reason why all these carnivore people are like carnivore plus fruit, carnivore plus
Right.
honey, because it works better that way. It just does.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go back to the archetype.
Okay. So my archetype, my people would be the ones that have spent 20 years popping in and out of what I should be doing to lose weight, to fuel my performance, to feel my best, whatever. It doesn't matter. They've tried everything. They've literally tried everything, sometimes obsessively, sometimes just in the course of trying to figure out like what the hell is best for my body. They work out, they're athletic, or at the very least, they want to reclaim some athleticism that they maybe had in the past and lost. They're not hard charging athletes. They're not going to the CrossFit Games. They just want to be healthy and they want to feel good and they want to look good. They want to feel at home in their bodies. So those are my people. And those are the people who, even though they've bought into the paleo thing, they've bought into the protein thing, they understand that those things are important. Real whole food from nature and protein. They still are so afraid of carbs, just like you said at the beginning. We still feel like too many carbs is gonna whatever, make us fat, make us whatever. And I also want to throw out there that there are a lot of experts talking about carbs right now. And it's not that they're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong about carbs. It is true that carbs are not required for us to live. Our body can create glucose from other raw materials. That is all true. The difference is those folks think that is a perfectly normal, reasonable type of physiology to call upon under any circumstances. I think it is an emergency situation. I think the body gluconeogenesis is an emergency switch, and it's not something that we want to call upon on a regular basis to fuel our body's energy needs. So we're looking at the same physiology in two different ways. So that's where I come at it. People are like, well, we don't need carbs to survive, right? They're the only non-essential macronutrient. Okay, but, I'm glad I have a mouth to breathe out of when I can't breathe out of my nose, but that doesn't mean that mouth breathing is optimal. So,
yeah, and I also think there's, the whole throw this in there, all of the blood sugar optimization, glucometer stuff that's going around. That's also kind of making it difficult for people to believe that carbs are something that we should be taking in when they raise your blood sugar. Oh no.
Oh my gosh, you see it go up and you're like, yeah, that's not supposed to happen. It actually is. Like your blood sugar is supposed to go up. And actually, even if you're not eating carbs, your body is going to recruit various hormones. Cortisol is one of them, to bring glucose out of storage and elevate your blood sugar. So you can have energy.
You can have
stored.
more insulin sensitivity not eating carbohydrates or lots of carbohydrates. In fact, I have more insulin sensitivity when I'm eating less carbs. I had more hypoglycemia, more dizziness, all the
Insulin
things.
resistance, you mean?
Well,
Insulin.
sensitivity.
You've lost insulin sensitivity.
Yes, lost.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay, got it.
And now I feel like way better. My brain is online more.
Yes, and glucose is the preferred fuel for your brain.
Yeah.
Shocking.
So it's interesting, but I think it gets very confusing for people, especially with the narrative right now around blood sugar in particular. Makes people
totally agree.
Fear carbs. Once again, it's always that's the biggest fear. Watch, we're gonna go to fat in like 10 years.
Go back.
We'll go back.
I say this, the way we feel about carbohydrates is the way our parents and grandparents felt about fat.
Yeah.
It's just an overwhelming paradigm, and we struggle to separate from it. We just do.
That's very true. We had Snackwell cookies in my house growing up.
Exactly.
My parents even
margarine.
They were on that boat. They didn't know any better.
Yeah. We didn't have
we get keto granola.
Keto granola, yes. And that's another thing. I've talked about this in my program a couple of times, is your insulin sensitivity does not hinge upon your not eating carbs, upon your not giving insulin anything to do.
Yeah.
There are other things that matter. Circulating fatty acids can block the insulin receptor. So if you're eating a ton of fat and then you're eating a ton of carbs, like there are different things that can contribute to changes in insulin sensitivity. It's not just about you flooded your body with too many carbs. We have insulin for a reason. There are amazing ways that you can improve insulin sensitivity. You can build muscle, you can move, you can take a walk, a tiny 10-minute walk after a meal. And so there are ways that I transition people into eating carbs. It's not just start eating carbs, start gorging on carbs. I start people on fruit. I know it's very popular to say you should do starch it, you should do sweet potatoes, you should do things like that. I don't think that works very well. We're also so afraid of fruit because we were also made to be so afraid of fructose, like it was going to destroy our liver if we had an apple. And that's freaking nonsense. Nobody has ever become insulin resistant from apples.
It's just interesting because it's like these are literally biblical foods. I'm not religious at all. But this is, we are like our society is very like religious. It's like, it's founded upon these Christian beliefs. So
it's so interesting.
It's how unchristian of everyone, huh? Did you think that apples are, I guess in the Garden of Eden, that was a little bit of a sketchy thing with the apple.
Forbidden fruit.
Yeah, the forbidden
that
fruit.
Must be it. That must be it. Yeah.
But fruit is nature's food. It's
Yes.
It's like our DNA recognizes these foods.
It's safety signals in a delicious little package. Think about the seasons that fruit is abundant. These are the seasons where our body is like, I'm safe. I have access to all the nutrients, all the glucose I need in this, whatever, summer, spring, whenever in nature. I don't even know when in nature all the fruit grows at this point, spring and summer. But that is the epitome of safety, of supply, and of nourishment, right? And so we're so afraid of that. It's like we're afraid of sending these safety signals to our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, again, like all of this information, you just get these little nuggets of things and then you carry them with you. Oh, an apple is like, for one of them for me was, an apple is good because it has more fiber, but banana not good because way more sugar, and don't eat the banana but have the apple, right? And it's like, if you ask yourself, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Is this
Where do you even
real?
get that?
Where do you even get these little nuggets? Because everyone has different ones. Because they hear something once, and maybe it actually there's a little bit of a confirmation bias for them because they prefer the apple over the bananas, and they're like, oh, I don't, you know what I mean? There's so much with this psychologically too.
Oh, there totally is. I think too, though, I think it's interesting. Some of the old adages that existed before we knew why maybe this made sense, like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. When people used to say that, we didn't know anything about akkermansia in the gut, which is fed by the pectin in apple peels. We didn't know that stuff. We didn't know that. I can't remember when this work was done. It was like a university in Australia. I don't know which one, but they studied the like satiety factor of certain foods, and apples are one of the most satiety promoting food of all of the ones that they tested. And the other one that was off the charts beyond any source of protein that they tested were white potatoes.
Mm.
And even though
makes
they're
sense.
high in the glycemic scale or index or whatever, they're massively satiating.
Yeah, I just had them for lunch. They were great.
Love it. I love potatoes.
Like, I ate a lot of potatoes today. These are doing it for me. So this archetype of the 40 something who's done so many plans over the last 20 years, even, they are afraid of carbohydrates. You're saying, okay, we're going to introduce carbohydrates because they are important to signal to your body we have safety,
Yeah.
right? So this is all about signaling safety. What else aside from, let's try to allow you to have carbs again and enjoy that aspect of life? Where do we go from there?
Yes. Okay. So what I have them do first thing in the morning, and this is all too, like this is my one-on-one clients, and it's also in my programs that I have available. So it's not like I'm not trying to gatekeep anything. This is everywhere. It doesn't matter if you work with me, if you listen to a podcast, or you're in one of my programs, you're going to hear this information. First thing in the morning, I think it's really important to have a breakfast. This is another thing that Stacey Sims, I think, talks about. 30 some grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. But my thing to add to that is some easily digested source of vitamin C rich carbohydrate. And that is because we want to bring any additional cortisol response in the morning down as much as we can. There's a natural cortisol rhythm that wakes you up, but above and beyond that, we don't want to be running on cortisol all morning long. So we never fast in the morning. We always are protein and carbs in the morning. I love that. This is what we crave for breakfast anyway. And that vitamin C really nourishes the adrenals. Our adrenals dump vitamin C throughout the course of the night. Our adrenals are responsible for our cortisol response. And so giving your adrenals some nourishment first thing in the morning with some kind of easily digested vitamin C rich source of carbohydrate is huge. That also has downstream effects for the thyroid. And we want the thyroid to be functioning optimally as well for the metabolic rate to function as intended, to not drive down that overall metabolic response just based on stress. So those are two other ones that I think are really big. Well, I don't want people's heads to explode.
Can you give some examples of the vitamin C rich carbohydrates that you like?
I actually am a
with?
fan of orange juice. And I know people want to die when I say that. They're not allowed to have juice. This is a terrible idea. But I'm telling you the transformations I have seen just based on that, whatever your biomarker is, whether it's energy during your workouts, whether it's your body temperature, which is in many people, not always, a good indicator of your metabolic function, basically just the heat that you're generating. It's profound, and it's always with protein. So one thing I like to do is have people do like a whey protein shake. We have this recipe for an Orange Julius protein shake, and it's whey protein, Greek yogurt, orange juice, a little bit of vanilla, and you just shake it up. It's so simple. It's so fast, and you can get that out of the way. We're so busy. We've got jobs, we've got kids, we've got people to get to all kinds of different things. If you can wake up in the morning and just do that shake real quick and then have second breakfast an hour or two later, then you're golden. Like your body's not going to descend into this spiraling stress response because you haven't eaten, because you're accidentally fasting, because you didn't have time to eat, because, you know, your kid woke you up and was like, Mom, I threw up. And then the whole day, you know, is completely off, thrown off. That's what I find the most powerful in people. And this is through experimentation. This is something that I have actually seen work.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah. And if it's
If
not the
you're
orange
afraid
juice,
to do
I guess citrus fruits, or is there anything else that you would recommend that
the orange
if
juice.
people don't want to do juice?
I'm
I
doing the
love
orange
it.
juice. I'm excited. I grew up drinking
And
orange
I'm
juice
not
every
talking about
morning.
a lot. I'm not talking
Yeah,
about
so did
only
I,
drinking
actually.
Yeah.
juice.
As a
I'm
kid, I had
talking
orange
about
juice
like
every
We need to
morning.
get
getting
back to it.
strategic and blending these solutions that respond not only to what our primal bodies need, which is our signals of safety, but what our modern lives demand, which is figure out a way to get your protein and carbs in quickly in the morning so you don't let it go too long. Oh my God.
I would love for you to be like on a call with like a Dave Asprey or one of these primal
I
bod
know.
peeps, because, you know, they would be a really fun debate to talk
I
to
know.
these people who are so pro getting, you know, into
You know,
ketosis
I do
and
agree with Dave
being
Asprey that
so
kale is pretty
like juice
useless.
is
But
the
other than that, you
enemy.
know, I remember Dave, like the first Paleo FX, he came to like the dinner that all the speakers were at and was passing out some of his
Ah, not my
bulletproof coffee.
kale.
Like he's a hard worker. He's done a great job of building his empire. He's also a man. I mean, no, totally.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't mean to throw shade at anyone, because it's like you are going to believe what has worked for you and
Yeah.
what you've seen worked for people. So even, you know, I even take what you're saying with a grain of salt, because I would have to see, you know, how I
Mm.
feel. I have experimented with doing those kinds of more, a
Yes,
little bit
you
more
need
high
second
glycemic
breakfast.
breakfast, even with the protein. And for me personally, I'm just starving an hour later. So I've had to work on how do I figure out how
Yes.
to keep myself feeling full and satiated, but each person is different. This is the thing, and this is the experimentation that
Yeah.
comes into play, and
And
not
here's something I
fearing
talk about as well, is I
something
want
just
my
because
people to
someone
know the difference
demonized
between
it.
being full and being fueled. So I think a lot of people really love keto. They really love high fat because they have a giant bolus of food sitting in their gut the entire day. You know, it takes more to digest, it takes more to make energy out of. And there are people that, and again,
Yeah.
second breakfast, right? I'm a 4 meal a day girl because I think for most people, you need that fourth meal to get all of the calories and protein in that you need. It's hard to get all the protein that we need. It's hard to get all the carbs that we need. So I'm like, wake up and get that stress level down
Yep.
with something
It
simple
is.
and easily digested. And then you've got an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. Then you get in your nutritious, real breakfast, right? Your second breakfast. And people love the second breakfast because who doesn't want to take their time? They really want. Yeah. We love it.
Second
Yeah.
breakfast is my favorite.
Yeah, Mackie has a sec every day.
Yeah.
That's something I'm working on with my work schedule. It's challenging because I start
Oh,
with
that's
clients.
smart.
I work with only pretty much East Coast clients because I like
Yeah.
being on Mountain Time and working with East Coast. Yeah, it's like, but it requires me to start very early,
Mhm.
so 7 in the morning usually. So I do need to get my like first little bit so that I'm not fasting for 3 hours in a row with clients. And I've noticed that it's a challenge, but it's something that I'm working on, because I will just feel horrible if I can't, I mean, fasted. Like if I have a coffee and then I'm 3 hours, I'm like shaking. I feel
Yeah.
like just, I can't even think straight. Like this is a terrible feeling, and I'm not fueled to train. So if I want to go do a workout, it's like, well, now I'm
Right.
in a deficit. This is a terrible place to be. I'm not working from an abundance of fuel. I love how you're saying that fueled versus full are two very different things. And I also think about that, you kind of think about calories in a different way, which I appreciate
Yeah.
that how you
Yeah.
describe
And that's
them
how I
as like
describe
a
metabolism
resource
in
of
general. Is
energy
it's not
that
about
you
how
have in
many
your body.
calories you burn as if like we need to get rid of something that's not good for us. It's how much energy can you generate? How much energy can you generate for the activities that you
Mhm.
want to be able to do with your kids, with your family, for
Mhm.
yourself
Yeah.
throughout the course of the day? We want more energy, not less. Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. How resourced are you? I think is a good thing, like way to think about it instead of I just think we're all taught how to, try to minimize and how little can I get.
Yes, and
That's
it
why
took
the
me a
idea of how much
long
can I get
time
is
to get to
kind
this
of
point, and it was an
revolutionary in a
interesting journey.
way.
I mean, I did all kinds of crazy shit. No regrets because I learned a lot, and I definitely spent the last probably 5, 7 years, maybe more than that, just nourishing myself, just really trying to nourish myself as best I could, and then I came to a point where I was like, "Okay, I'm ready to play with a few things."
Yeah.
And I did, and I learned a lot through that journey, and I'm learning a
Yeah.
lot now.
Yeah. And you're talking about peptides, which we don't have time to get into, but I will point people towards, your
Yes.
podcast at the end. I don't know if you have an episode where you talk about
Yeah.
that, or they can go to Ali Shapiro's Insatiable podcast with you because you guys go into that quite a bit on that episode.
Yeah,
If you want
that's
to
a
hear
great one.
Liz talk more about her experience with peptides and how that all went. Any like final questions? I think I want to just because I
Good,
know
no,
you
great.
had some. I just asked you that, Mackie, and then just bulldozed over you. I'm just I'm just thinking about so many things, and I want, in like 5 minutes that we have with Liz, was there anything in particular that you have questions around?
No, I mean, I think it's everything that you're talking about is such an amazing way to think
Yeah.
about it, and it obviously applies to women, but a lot of this applies to men as well. So for any men who are listening, take this stuff in, try it
Yes.
out, experiment, see what works for you.
Yeah, I think once you notice how good you feel, that's such good
Yeah.
evidence, and you don't have to constantly be focusing
Yeah.
on how you look, which I know is a driving factor for why a lot of people want to try and make dietary changes. But when you go into the resourcing yourself and fueling yourself, you just notice a difference in
Mm.
how you feel, and you have an abundance of energy to, guess what, do more activity, which, then you're going to be burning more, whatever, energy in a sense. Although if you talk about a study, let's go to studies, everybody, we're going to break it down now and I think I've mentioned this before, like our metabolism doesn't really
No.
change until after 60, and it changes, it's not even a crazy downward slope. And so we have to get it out of our head that some magical thing has
Yeah.
happened where, oh no, we're 40, we're 45, we're 50, and we have this really slow metabolism. But there are things that can lower our resting or metabolic rate if we
Yeah.
are doing
Yeah,
things
just
like
a couple of
harming
days
ourselves
of
all the
calorie
time with
deprivation
stressful
will
activities,
cause your body to lower
underfueling,
its
all of that,
resting
right?
metabolic rate. I mean, it's pretty quick. Our bodies are very wise in that way. Yep. By fueling your
Then you can also increase it in the same way by fueling yourself and getting it into safety. Yeah. So I think this is such an important conversation to have. And it's just one, that, again, yes, you have to be in the deficit. That is true. But we have to kind of know where we're at
Yes.
as far as stress that we put on our body to understand what that deficit would look like. Because it's probably not 1,200 or 1,500. Most of the times the deficit is a lot higher than that, actually, to help you actually get to your goal. In my experience working with women who are very active, I'm like,
Wait,
guess
they're
what? Your
down
deficit's
2,000
2,000.
calories?
They're like,
Oh,
what?
they're
That's
they're at
insane. That would
2,000.
make me
Yeah.
gain
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying
Huh?
they can consume that to be in a deficit. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. If you want to do as much Peloton as you're doing and classes as you're doing and taking your walks and running around after your kids, chauffeuring them from place to place, and the constant energy that
Mhm.
takes you to actually see a body composition change with doing all of that, you need to be
Yes,
having that
it is.
much.
Well,
And
and
it's like
because
a
also in
big
that
challenge to get
situation,
people to
your,
trust
again,
that.
air quotes, your progress will be slower But you want at all costs, like, please, when you construct these programs for
Yes, it
yourselves,
will.
anybody who is looking at being in a deficit to lose weight, do your very best to mitigate that outsized stress response that your body creates when you are in a large deficit. Yeah, you can make it happen fast, but if you're doing it the old-fashioned way, your body is going to respond, and it's going some people can power through it and can deny themselves, the food that their body is asking for. They can keep moving when their body is demanding that they rest, but very few people can do that, and I would argue it's not healthy. It's even less healthy to power through it that way. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
100%.
will catch
Yeah.
up to you in the long
I
run. You
would
might
love
be able to
that.
strong arm that for a little while. We'll definitely have to have you back on the show because I want to talk more about, especially want to talk next time more about your journey of personal training and building muscle. And, as we age, we talk a lot about that, Mackie and I, and the importance of that.
Mhm.
That's what we mainly focus on in our programs with clients is how to actually build
Yep.
muscle and the science behind that, because it's not just going to a workout and you're going to build
Yep.
muscle. Like there's a lot more that goes into actually seeing hypertrophy. And I know you experienced that yourself when you tried to build muscle. I remember hearing that on Ali's podcast. Like, this is not like, oh, in a month I built 5 pounds of muscle. Like that's
That I
just
have not done.
that would
I
be
have done a lot of
awesome.
things, but
Maybe
I
if
have
we were
not taken
taking,
steroids.
steroids, that could happen. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But before we wrap, I would like the listeners to know where they can find you. And I would also love for you to plug the supplement that you've created, because I have been talking about this with clients and how this
Yes, I
can
should
support
send you
them
some
after
too.
they work
Have I
out if
sent you
they
any yet?
want
I need to
to
send you some.
optimize building
I'm
muscle
I'm gonna send you
from
some.
X.
It's so I created,
No, I would love
with
to
in
try some.
partnership with a really
Yeah.
amazing formulator, an essential amino acid supplement made specifically for women over 35. So we've got essential amino acids, we've got additional leucine in there. Leucine is an essential amino acid that is critical for muscle protein synthesis, so maintaining and building muscle. We also added electrolytes for enhanced absorption of the amino acids, which is such a game changer. I don't know that any other amino acid supplements have that. Maybe they do, but not the ones that we researched directly. We also added taurine, which I absolutely love for so many things. It's not an essential amino acid, but it is wonderful for the man. I'm still learning what you can and cannot say and how you can say it. Taurine is wonderful for supporting healthy hormones and supporting healthy energy production and supporting healthy cardiovascular function. It's just a phenomenal substance. And I find it really adds some additional sort of clean energy to the overall hit from these essential amino acids. The brand is called Ideal Age because we can make any age our ideal age. We are all in that space where we can optimize everything that we're doing and have, the best next chapter ever. And it's available at idealage.com. And it's just a phenomenal supplement. I've had such amazing feedback on it. I'm a very small business. I'm sort of a one-woman show. We're a small team, and this is my brainchild, but I really hope that I can reach like that everyday athlete. It doesn't have to be someone that's doing, ultra marathons, like the amazing stuff that you do. I want you for sure to take it. Like I would love for you to take it before, during, and after. Oh, so badass though.
Well, just an everyday athlete that decided to do something really hard. This is not like, I'm not a competitive ultra marathoner thing. This is just I want to do kind of like a masogi, like something
Listen,
that's so
even
hard
even
that
that
like
with
there's a
you, that I
50%
mean,
chance
I'm
that I
like
can't make
that
it. So
I'm
that's why
so
I'm doing
impressed.
this.
It's
It's a
incredible. But even if
mental
you're just working
fortitude
out 3 times a week
challenge.
and you want to maximize your response to your workout, like this is my absolute favorite supplement. And before I
Yeah.
created one, I was taking essential amino acids from other brands. They're that wonderful. So that's one of my number one favorite recommendations for anybody that's looking to level up or at least to get that maximum response for the effort that they're putting out. Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that's the biggest thing. Like, let's make sure that you're actually getting response from the effort that you're putting out, because it's a lot of work to do those classes that you're taking or going to the gym and strength trainer doing like our programs. You're dedicating 45 minutes to an hour, and it's like, don't you want to reap the
Yes.
rewards of that and
Absolutely.
doing things with your nutrition and through supplementation really, really helps. So I'm excited for people. I'm excited to
Really?
try it myself, especially for what I'm doing. There's a lot of talks about essential amino acids in the endurance world. Within my sport, at past a certain mileage,
I think after about 12 hours or so,
yeah,
it's
after
important
12
to
hours of
Okay.
nonstop movement,
Yeah.
that's something that's recommended for me to take in the middle of my
Yeah.
race to
Cannibalize
help
all your
me
muscle.
so
Yeah.
that I don't, basically burn too much muscle and really, yeah. So yeah,
You
that's
can be my
exciting. I
first
have to see
sponsored
how it goes, and then
athlete.
I can be like, I did
Sweet.
my ultra on Liz's product.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, because it really is talked
It
about
actually
in our
sounds
Yeah.
perfect
yeah in
Yeah,
our,
like
in
for
our
ultras.
community.
or hear
Yeah,
what
with
you think about it.
electrolytes
I'll
in there
send you one.
built in
Mhm.
and the taurine. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Well, we will have all of this in the show notes, guys. So if you want to head to Liz's website and Instagram, that if you just go into the show notes, you'll find all of that. And just remember to leave a review if you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now you can leave reviews. If you're watching this on YouTube,
Thumbs up.
if you're not subscribed yet, you just click the links in our bio to watch these. Just hit the subscribe and the like button. Just really helps get our show out there. And share this with people if you think, someone in your life would like to enjoy this conversation. Share it. And we'll catch you guys next week
Love
in
it.
another episode
That
of the
was so
Longevity
fun.
Lab. Yeah. That was so